Welcome to A Closer Look at Storytelling, Take Me With You, Part 2. We know that storytelling is a collaborative effort between the storyteller and the listener. And the storyteller strives to create a connection, to bridge from that listener's experience to something new. We know that the basic story unit is the scene with people and action and setting. And last time we looked at sensory detail and how that can help draw the reader or the listener into the story. But the most important thing, the thing that draws our attention to begin with, is people. It's people who take action and take us from place to place, people who drive the story questions, what will happen next and what is at stake? We care most about people who make difficult choices, who take action, who overcome obstacles, and who rise to the challenge of life's tests. It's not only the outer journey that interests us, it's the inner journey that accompanies that outer journey, the inner emotional journey. A good story is one that takes us along on that emotional journey as we go through the outer journey in the world, the different situations and episodes. Now let me take a moment to make a note about the difference between an ordinary story hero and the manifestation of God. When we normally read a story, we expect the hero to have weaknesses that he will have to overcome, that he will grow and develop, gain insight, and learn as he goes along in the story. The manifestation of God doesn't have weaknesses to overcome. He is not the one that changes and grows and develops throughout the story. He remains consistent. What he does do is respond to the variety of situations and the people that he encounters along the way. There still is an emotional journey that goes along with this because there is still the manifestation encounters situations and people that bring forth joy and sadness or anger. So we still have that emotional journey to go on. Let us look at a few story tools to help us with this. One thing is the two people scenes. That is, as you approach organizing your story, think in terms of scenes with two people. This is a way of creating focus in the story, of creating an active dynamic, because a lot goes on between two people in their interaction or in their connection. For example, we might think of the story of the Bab, the life and mission of the Bab. And the Bab and Mullah Hussein, when Mullah Hussein first encounters the Bab, and then we see them in the room of the Bab on that night of the declaration. The whole quest for the promised Chaim comes to a head here in this one room, in this one encounter, in a very intense emotional experience. We might think of the Bab and Vahid, who was sent as a messenger from the Shah to investigate the claims of the Bab. Is the Bab who he says he is? And the 3 interviews that Vahid does with the Bab in that one place where the two men are together. And that again is an intense emotional experience, an emotional journey that we go on. Now, in each of those episodes, the people are together in the same room, but you can also think of two people who are not together in the same room, but the actions of one impact the other. For example, if you think of the Bab and the Grand Vizier, they are not together in one space, but it is the orders of the Grand Vizier that have great impact on the journey of the Bab. So when the Bab is very close to Tehran, has been invited by the Shah to meet with him, and what wonderful things could come from that meeting. He stops at the village of Kulain, and there an order from the Grand Vizier comes that changes direction for the Bab and sends him, instead of Tehran, to Maku. and later orders from the Grand Vizier take him to Chirik, and finally to Tabriz, and the execution of the Bab at Tabriz. So even though the Bab and the Grand Vizier are not together in one space, the impact of the orders of the Grand Vizier are immense in the life of the Bab. This brings us to another story tool, which is a very useful one and very basic, that of comparison and contrast. So the different choices that people make, the different actions that they take, their responses to life's tests, and their different qualities of character that come to the surface in these various situations, all of these allow us to compare and contrast. For example, you might think of the Bab and the two governors, the governor of Shiraz, who has him arrested and attempts to have him executed, how different that is to the response of the governor of Isfahan, who grows to love the Bab and becomes a Babi and wants to take his message all the way to the Shah. You might think also of Baha'u'llah in the early days when he was teaching in the province of Nur, and how he approached the Mujtahid and then the Dervish, and how different their responses were, and therefore how different Baha'u'llah's response was in his teaching of them. And of course, what greater contrast than the mullahs in Baghdad with the Bab's eldest uncle. The mullahs who demanded from Baha'u'llah that Baha'u'llah perform a miracle, and then they would believe in him and follow his cause. And the Bab's uncle who asked Baha'u'llah to remove the obstacles because he wanted to believe in the Bab and had some serious questions. So not only do you have the differences of these two, of the Bab and the mullahs, and the mullahs in this context could be thought of as one entity, one person, because of their united demand. You have the difference between these two situations, and because they are so different, Baha'u'llah himself responds in a very different way. It's a very good comparison and contrast to bring up interesting conversations and insights. And of course, what greater contrast than Baha'u'llah with Mirza Yahya, which brings us to the discussion of another story, to the language of virtues. I bring this up in relation to Baha'u'llah and Mirza Yahya, for example, because it becomes so clear as we follow them throughout the story of the different qualities of character and how they respond so differently in terms of leadership. When Mirza Yahya has the opportunity in Baghdad to be a leader, or even back in Tehran, how did he handle that? What kind of virtues or lack thereof did he show, as opposed to Baha'u'llah, and what kind of qualities of character that he showed? But the language of virtues allows us to add another layer to our story that deepens and helps us to learn as we go along a little something more. This language is something that is often lacking in our current discourse, and so to add that in to describe the behavior and the people, the different situations as they come up, can add really a good texture to your story. One resource for virtues I would recommend is the virtueproject.com. If you go to the website and click on their virtue definitions, you can scroll over those definitions and scroll over each of the virtues and find a definition, and that's a good way to enlarge your basket of virtues to draw on. And one last story tool is questions. We can tell a story to answer a question. You can bring up a question and then tell a story to answer that. Or you can use a story to raise a question, to ask a question and promote conversation. What does Baha'u'llah say about miracles? Are miracles the proof of a prophet? You might use a question also as a storytelling device. For instance, you can, in the midst of a story, ask a rhetorical question. What did Baha'u'llah do? Or you might repeat a question as a refrain. Various things come up where Baha'u'llah has the option of running away, essentially, or meeting whatever that challenge is. So to ask, did Baha'u'llah run away? Can be a good repetitive question. Or what did he do next? Or something along that line. To wrap up, I'd like to share an analogy that was shared by Douglas Martin, who was a retired Universal House of Justice member. This was at a time some years ago when he was speaking to a room full of scholars about the Ruhi Institute. And he used the analogy of a country in Latin America that he named, and he said, when they want to build a footbridge across a chasm, first they cast a line from one side to the other, and from that, the rest of the footbridge is built. He went on to say, this is very much like what the Ruhi Institute does. It casts a line that connects mind and heart. And he went on to talk about how very powerful that is. And I'd like to say that that is an apt analogy too for story and the power of story. The power of story is that it does connect mind and heart. And that is what really makes us care. So with that, I would like to wish you well in your storytelling practice, and I look forward to meeting you at our next video.